personal, social and criminal history, we are not saying that that personal, social and criminal history does not matter. It's clear from some of our statistical analyses that it does matter. But what is happening is that it is being overlaid by new things happening in this post-first interview period. And some of the new things are particularly new bonds, particularly with girlfriends, but sometimes with parents re-emerging, and there's considerable evidence of parental links strengthening as people make a serious attempt to start desisting. But it looks as if, we're not completely sure about this yet, we've got to do some more work on it, but it looks as if a crucial variable is this: a wish to try to change. If you don't want to try to change, then nothing much happens. But if you want to try to change, then things start to happen. You begin to think about yourself and your surroundings a bit differently. You start taking action towards desistance, of course in the context of all this, but then once you've started this, then you hit this, because you're going to hit some obstacles. You're going to try and find some reinforcers, and this whole process of struggling, this is why I've got struggling in the title, struggling, I'm trying to desist, but I'm struggling. And to try and make sense of all that, I'm going to now give you a case history of somebody called John. Of course, he's not really called John. We gave some quite strong confidentiality assurances, so I cannot tell you everything about John, but I assure you that what I'm going to tell you about John does not distort the essentials of John's case. We first picked up John at age 20 in a young offenders institution. I haven't put official criminality measures here in for reasons of confidentiality, but believe me, it was high-ish, not the highest in the sample, but high-ish. He was pretty unsure whether desistance was possible. He was homeless and had been homeless for the last 5 months. The probation service, according to his account, did not know that he was homeless because he did not tell them, and because in England and Wales people in the probation service don't do home visits anymore, and therefore they didn't find out. So he was living as a homeless person with some other mates. He said that was a pretty desperate time. It was very difficult, and thinking about it now, the only way he could deal with it was just to try and block it out psychologically, so it was obviously quite damaging. His relationship with his mother was estranged for reasons connected with his offending. He wasn't yet a father. Although he was age 20, he had never yet looked for work, and when asked the question, is it hard to get a job in Sheffield, he said, well, I honestly wouldn't know because I've never tried, age 20. He was on heroin and crack. His mates were incredibly important to him, and the obstacles that he identified were the excitement of offending, lack of money, easy money, drugs, and where he lived. Interestingly, the missing one was work, because work was irrelevant because he never looked for it. When asked at interview 1, what are the good things in your life right now, he said, and remember this is South Yorkshire, nout. And to be quite candid, he seemed to be about right. And I've forgotten to tell you that his previous girlfriend had also recently rejected him because of his offending. But at the end of interview 1, we also asked him, what would you like to be like in 5 years' time? He said, and this is an exact quote from the transcript, confident, hard-working, trustworthy, and a good person to get on with. So there's something positive in the back of his head, despite the fact that clearly there is very little indeed that is positive in his current situation. So what happens to John after that? Well, briefly, between interviews 1 and 2, he gets convicted for one property offence for which he gets a community penalty. His self-report was still high, almost as high as here, so he was lucky. He wasn't convicted at all at that point, so his official offending is definitely declining. His self-reported offending is also declining. It's pretty high here. It's only medium here. It's still there here, but it's low. So there's a definite reduction in self-reported offending. In terms of intention to desist, it's not until the 4th interview that he dares to say that he's definitely intending to desist. Up till then, he's been saying he'd like to, but he's not sure whether it's possible. So what are the positives? Well, the probation service found him a home and on leaving the YOI, and immediately afterwards he found a new girlfriend with whom he got on famously and built his relationship with her, and that remained in place throughout the rest of the time. They then had a son who was born soon after the 2nd interview and was 8 months old at the time of the 3rd interview, 18 months at the time of the 4th interview, with another child expected. John dotes on his son, gets on very, very well with his girlfriend, and begins to change his life as a consequence of all this. And this also assists with his relationship with his mother, John's mother, because the improvement in the relationship with the girlfriend and becoming a father, and clearly mattering to be a father, produces a positive reaction in the mother. You can see the kind of series of positives beginning to click into each other. And then on the next one, suddenly he gets interested in work, having been totally uninterested at this point. He applies. He's very upset that no employers reply to him. I don't know why he's upset. I would have expected that, but he's upset. But then he gets a job, and at the time of the 3rd interview he's been in work for 3.5 months, but then he's laid off the job after only another month after that interview, and he's really upset about that. He tries hard to get another job, and it gets me mad that he can't find another job. But of course he has no qualifications and a heavy criminal record. Meanwhile, he was on heroin and crack, which stayed for a little bit after he left prison, but then the probation service got him onto a drug substitute, and so he came off heroin and crack. So he switched to cannabis and got dependent on cannabis, and he's still dependent on cannabis at this point, and is rather regretting being dependent on cannabis, unlike some of our offenders who don't really regard cannabis as very interesting or important. John was regarding it as definitely a negative, but he was on